The MMA world is in shock. Former UFC fighter Godofredo Pepey Castro, a man once known for his wild energy and fearless fighting spirit, has died in prison at just 38 years old. It's one of those stories that stops you in your tracks, a mix of tragedy, confusion, and heartbreak that leaves fans asking how someone who once stood in front of roaring crowds could end up alone in a cell, gone far too soon. According to the Broward Sheriff's Office, Castro was found unresponsive in his cell around 8 p.m. on Saturday night. A detention deputy discovered him during routine rounds. What followed was a desperate attempt to save him. CPR, paramedics rushing in, the flashing lights of rescue vehicles breaking through the night. But despite every effort, Godofredo Castro was pronounced dead at a nearby hospital. Authorities say it was an apparent suicide. No foul play is suspected, and the cause of death is still under investigation. For fans who followed his career, the news hit hard. This was a man who had once fought under the bright lights of the UFC, who had entered the octagon with a grin that mixed confidence with chaos. He wasn't just another fighter, he was a showman. Castro had that rare quality that made fans remember him even if he wasn't in the main event. He was known for his flashy moves, his wild kicks, and his unpredictable energy. Every time he stepped into the cage, you didn't know what was going to happen, and that's exactly what made him exciting. But behind that fire and flair, something else was brewing, something no one could see from the outside. Castro's story began in Fortaleza, Brazil, where he grew up with dreams bigger than his surroundings. Like many fighters from humble beginnings, he saw mixed martial arts as a way out, a way to prove himself, to build a name, to fight for something beyond survival. When he joined the Ultimate Fighter, Brazil, fans quickly noticed him. He was emotional, passionate, and raw, the kind of fighter who seemed to wear his heart as openly as his gloves. When he finally earned a spot in the UFC, it was the fulfillment of a lifelong dream. But life in the fight game isn't as glamorous as it looks. Beneath the lights, there's loneliness. Beneath the adrenaline, there's exhaustion. And when the cheers fade, silence can be deafening. Castro's UFC career was a roller coaster, 5 wins, 6 losses. Moments of brilliance followed by stretches of struggle. He scored spectacular finishes that showed flashes of genius, but consistency was never his ally. After parting ways with the UFC, he continued fighting in smaller promotions, still chasing the high, still chasing that spark. But something in him seemed to shift. The confidence that once powered him began to waver. Earlier this year, Castro was arrested in Deerfield Beach, Florida, after an alleged violent incident involving his wife. Details remain limited, but the charge was serious enough that his bail was set at $120,000. Even then, he couldn't go free. He was placed under an immigration hold. That meant no matter how much he wanted to fight his case from the outside, he couldn't. He was stuck. For a man whose life had always been about motion, about fighting, training, pushing forward, being locked up was the kind of confinement that cuts deep. That's where the story took its darkest turn. When news broke of his death, it wasn't just fans who were stunned. His friends, his teammates, and those who trained alongside him were crushed. Ronnie Mariano Bezerra, better known as Ronnie Jason, a fellow fighter and one of Castro's old teammates from TUF Brazil, shared a heartbreaking message on social media. Unfortunately, he couldn't handle the pressure and ended up taking his own life, Bezerra wrote. Fighters can be very strong physically, but if their mind is unstable, they can end up committing an act like this. Very sad to lose this great partner, an unparalleled guy. A partner, a friend, a brother. Wherever you are, may God bless you. I love you, brother. Those words struck a chord, not just within the MMA community, but beyond it. Because what Bezerra said is painfully true. Physical strength doesn't always protect you from mental pain. Fighters, by nature, are trained to endure, to push through pain, to suppress fear, to keep going no matter what. But when that instinct becomes a way of life, when you're always told to be strong, it can become impossible to admit when you're breaking inside. And maybe that's what happened here. Maybe Godofredo Pepey Castro, the fighter who once danced around opponents with laughter in his eyes, was fighting a battle far more dangerous than any he ever faced in the cage, a battle inside his own mind. There's something haunting about that. For the people who remember him from his UFC days, the image of Castro was full of energy. He was unpredictable, sometimes even reckless, but always entertaining. He fought like he lived, emotionally, fully, without holding back. That's what made fans love him. Even in defeat, he never seemed to lose his fire. He was the kind of fighter who would get knocked down and come back grinning, ready to go again. So hearing that he died alone, in silence, is jarring. It's the kind of news that makes you stop scrolling, that makes you rethink what you know about strength. In the days since his passing, the MMA world has been grappling not only with grief, but with uncomfortable questions. How many fighters are struggling in silence? How many are battling mental health issues with no support? The fight world celebrates toughness, it demands it. But that same toughness often becomes a prison, trapping fighters behind walls of pride and fear. And it's not just in MMA. Across sports, across entertainment, we've seen this story play out again and again. People who gave everything to their passion, only to find themselves lost when the lights go out. The discipline that made them champions becomes the same thing that keeps them from asking for help. They're warriors, yes, but they're human first. In the case of Godofredo Castro, we may never fully understand what happened in those final hours. Maybe it was despair. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was simply exhaustion from a life that had demanded too much for too long. What we do know is that this wasn't the ending anyone imagined for him. His story, from the bustling gyms of Brazil to the roaring octagons of the UFC, and finally to a quiet cell in Florida, feels almost cinematic in its tragedy. It's a fall from grace, yes, but also a mirror held up to an industry that often celebrates the fight, but forgets the fighter. And yet, amid the sadness, there's something to take away, a lesson, however painful, about the importance of mental health, especially among those who seem the strongest. Because the truth is, no one is immune to breaking. Not even the ones who've learned to throw punches for a living. If you look at old footage of Castro, you'll see glimpses of who he was, the bright smile, the wild hair, the fighter's fire. You can almost feel the energy radiating from him. That's the man fans will remember, not the inmate, not the headlines, but the warrior who fought with heart and flair, who carried the weight of his dreams, and for a while, made them real. There's a moment from his early UFC career that fans often bring up. After one of his wins, Castro dropped to his knees, screaming and crying, overwhelmed by emotion. It was pure, raw humanity, the kind you can't fake. That moment said everything about who he was. He wasn't just fighting opponents. He was fighting for himself, for his family, for a future that always seemed just within reach. And that's what makes his death so painful. Because it's not just the loss of a fighter. It's the loss of a person who tried, who really tried, to find light in a brutal world. Now, as tributes pour in and fans revisit old highlights, his name is being spoken again, not for his victories or his defeats, but for the lessons his story leaves behind. Ronnie Bezerra's words linger. Fighters can be strong physically, but if their mind is unstable, it's a message worth remembering, not just in MMA, but everywhere. If this tragedy can serve any purpose, maybe it's to remind people, fighters, fans, anyone listening, that asking for help doesn't make you weak. That even the toughest among us need support. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you're not okay. Godofredo Pepey Castro will be remembered as a man of passion, of courage, and of contradictions, someone who burned brightly, even if that flame didn't last as long as it should have. His life was messy, intense, human. And his story, as painful as it is, will stay with those who knew him, those who watched him, and those who understand what it means to keep fighting, even when the world stops cheering. He was 38 years old, gone too soon. But his spirit, the fighter in him, still echoes in the hearts of those who saw him give everything, both in the cage and in life. Rest in peace, Godofredo Pepey Castro. The cage is silent now, but your fight will never be forgotten. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to daily updates and never miss a video.